Well, hello YouTubers, hopefully everybody's doing great. Tonight I am tinkering with my Expedition, the 4.6, and a lot of these actually had the 5.4. But the issue I have is when it's running, got this god-awful constant, sounds like a bearing, squeaking sound down in there, and I want to show you what it is. A lot of these 4.6 have this issue. And we'll start it up here, and we'll look at it, and I'll give you a sound, give you a listen of the sound here as I start it up and explain what's going on. All right, we got it running, and hopefully you can hear it over my voice. Now I'm going to get up here with the camera, and I'm going to let you listen. You can hear it. It sounds like a bearing, and what it is a pulley right there. That belt goes around. The tensioner is bad. So what we got to do is pull that out there, and we're going to check it. Alright, now before we pull that out there, how I found that noise, sometimes you just got to use just some hoses. And I have a stethoscope here. It's one of these little guys you can stick the end there on a pulley, and you can usually hear the noise through vibrations and sounds. Actually, I couldn't find it with that, believe it or not. How I found it was just a typical little garden hose. I just stuck it down there on each pulley and put the other end up to my ear until I found the noise, which is basically how you can find noises. A lot of times when you have noises like that, you can almost figure out where it's coming from, but you got to remember those pulleys down there are so close together, it's really hard sometimes to figure out where that noise is coming from. So it's really best just to get a hose, stick it up to your ear, and start the engine up, and be careful with the fan right there and that belt, and just kind of move that hose around until you get an idea where it's coming from. Then you can kind of pinpoint it and go from there. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out of here, and it should be a pretty easy job. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and disconnect this hose right here, this top radiator hose. This particular model, this Expedition, the coolant level is a little low, and most of the fluid level should be just below this right below the hose. So I don't think I'm going to get much leakage out there. So I don't feel like draining fluid out and everything, the antifreeze. So I'm just going to put this hose off to the side and put a cloth there. And this is going to give me a lot more excess up here, and we should be able to pull that right out of there. We're not going to have to do a whole lot, believe it or not, but we will have to get a, I'm going to zoom in there, and right on, let's see, right there where that tensioner is, there's a little square hole. You stick a 3/4 inch drive-in and a pipe, and you kind of turn that, and it will release the tension on that belt, and we can slip that belt up. Now, we will have to slip the belt off, but what I like to do, I'll grab a bungee cord, and I'll tie around the belt and tie around something up here on the top so the belt doesn't go flying off on all the other pulleys, because sometimes it gets a little difficult getting that belt back on there. So we'll go ahead and set that up, and we'll go ahead and start taking this off. All right, I got the clamp off, and actually there's no water, no antifreeze came out of there whatsoever, so that is certainly good. I'll have to check the level a little bit later. But this engine's only got a little over 100,000 miles on it, so it sounds good. It's just that noise. Next thing I'm going to do is take a little bracket there off its support for the radiator hose. I'm just going to take it out of the way, probably looks like a 13 deep well, and pull it out of there, and that should give us a lot more excess into that tensioner down there. And we'll go ahead and pop that belt off and get the tensioner off, and we'll look at that. Okay, now my radiator hose support bracket, it's off. It was just a 13 millimeter bolt. I used a little deep well on it. And now I have a breaker bar set up. Now, I've got the breaker bar sitting down there, and it's into that square slot on that tensioner. And the idea is to get up here and kind of push up on this. And this will release the tension on this belt. And what I'll do, I'll slip it off the alternator with one hand and kind of loosen that up, and then take this out, take the breaker bar out, and then we can start working on that pulley down there. I like to set the camera up where you can just kind of watch me, but I don't have enough room right here. But trust me, it's pretty easy to do if you got pretty good leverage, and we'll go ahead and take that off. Alright, got the belt off the pulley, and we'll take out the breaker bar. And I thought I was going to use a bungee cord, but I just left that belt kind of laying there on the water pump. It's not going to hurt anything, and now we can go ahead and start taking this out. Now what we got to do, we got to take out those four 10 millimeter bolts, and I think there's 3 on the top. And let me see, I think there's just 3. I think there's 3 on the top. We'll go ahead and take those out, and we'll pull that whole assembly out there. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, out it comes. Got the last bolt out. There it is. There's our culprit that's given us our issues. And here are the 3 bolts that come out. They are 10 millimeter. And one other quick note before I show you the noise. Right there is where the 3 bolts bolt onto the block. So when you put those bolts back in, make sure you start them with your fingers and don't cross-thread them. And one other quick note. I took a bungee cord around my belt and kind of kept it from falling down in there, and trust me, it makes a big difference. And the belt, the pulley from that tensioner actually fits right in there. Well, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. There you go. Fits there, so when I put that tensioner on, all I got to do is slide that belt on it, and it helps out quite a bit. All right, now here is the tensioner I just took off. Sorry about that. It's really, people don't understand. It's hard to hold a camera and talk and work on a vehicle at the same time. I don't have a tripod big enough to do this, so I apologize if you are complaining about my camera shaking, but I'm trying to keep it as steady as I can. Okay, now here is what I just took off. This is the tensioner on this particular Ford. Now I know a lot of Mountaineers and Ford Explorers from 02 and up have this same tensioner. Sometimes on those models you have to take off this plastic shroud here, because there's not a lot of room in there like this Expedition is, but you can still do it, but it's probably a little bit easier to take the shroud off. That's what I usually do on those 4.6s on the Expeditions and the Mountaineers. Now here is a good one, and it's not the one for this, but this is just a good one. It's the same principle. Hear how quiet that wheel spins? Nice and quiet. Shine the light there a little bit better. Now here's the one I just took off, and this is our noise, and I'll see if you can kind of hear this. So I set some light up here. I'll just go over here in this light. I'll spin this wheel and listen to this. Now it's supposed to sound like it. So there's our noise. Big difference there. Now, I just want to virtually quiet, and a bad one. So all I have to do now is go out and find one of these guys. Now I do have some stuff laying right here. I'm going to see if I have a pulley and a bearing that'll work on that. And if so, I'll put it together and we'll start it up and listen to it. So that is what your noise is. If you're hearing that noise I just let you listen to a few minutes ago, it is this guy here. Now, while you're in there, go ahead. You've got another pulley here. Go ahead and spin that pulley and make sure it's okay. It should spin and be really quiet. I'll go ahead and spin it there. Well, the belt's hitting it. There we go. But it's pretty quiet. Hardly making any noise. So just check your other pulley there. And I believe that is about it. Except for the power steering and AC unit and the alternator. Those are the only other 2 pulleys you have on this particular model. So there we go. Let me see what I can scrounge up here. And if I can find another bearing, a pulling assembly here, we'll change it and put it back on and listen to the difference. So let me go see what we got here. Just for the heck of it, I thought I'd just take it apart. I might actually have a bearing for this pulley, but I stuck my finger in there, and if you can listen to this. That bearing is shot. So that's my noise. So I thought I'd just kind of take it apart. So let me see if I can find a bearing. If not, I'll have to go to the parts store and see what we can do there. Well, I guess that's not going to work. I checked all my little bearings, and I don't have one that's going to go down over that. Ford made that just a little bit bigger, and you can see there's the regular housing that goes on. The bearing and everything goes on the housing okay, but none of these bearings will go down in there. So I'm going to have to go to the parts store tomorrow, either find the bearing for this and press it in or get another unit. So I tried. That's the way it goes. But we'll see what we can get into tomorrow. But definitely I'll get that noise fixed. And I think what I might do is go ahead and pull this pulley off here too and just change that bearing out and just have it all done at one time. It makes a little noise, but it's not dead quiet like it's supposed to be. But since this motor runs so good, I might as well just do it all before winter gets here. So, well, that's how it goes sometimes. I've decided to go ahead and take off this idler pulley, and would you know, the bearing is bad in it too. Hear that? You can hear it. And I can really feel it on my finger. So it looks like I'll be swapping bearings here. I actually came up with 2 bearings off of other Ford pulleys. That'll work. So we'll go ahead and swap that around. So it looks like both bearings in both of those pulleys were bad. The tensioner and the idler pulley. So let's change this out and see what happens. Okay, now I got the new bearing in the idler pulley. And it sounds amazing. It's nice and quiet. Check that out. Well, a little update. Sometimes I get pretty lucky. I went ahead and pressed this bearing out of my the one that was bad, and I found another pulley had the same size bearing, so I'm just going to swap bearings around. I have a little press over there that makes it a little bit easier, so it looks like I actually might get this done tonight. And here's what's left of the bearing that was bad. This thing was shot. And how I got this out, I'll just show you real quick. If you want to do this, I used a socket and kind of stuck it in there like that and pressed down. I was worried about that lip because sometimes you can't press bearings out with those lips. I just used a socket. Here it is. Right, just went down in that bearing, and this is 1 inch, see, it's one. Looks like a good inch. I'm not sure what it is, but it just goes down in there, and with just enough room to catch on the edge of that bearing and push it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap bearings here. So I'm gonna go take this bearing out, and I'll press it in there, and we'll look at it and see if that'll work. We actually may have this done here shortly. After a little bit of bearing searching and everything, I actually had a couple of these other bearings that were laying around, and they're in good shape. And I actually just went ahead and put another one in there, and no more noise. So I'm ready to stick that baby in. Hopefully you won't have to do all this, but I just had the parts laying around. But you probably just go out and buy another bearing and a pulley and just change it, and you'll be okay. But hopefully you won't have to go through what I did. But what you do, if you just go out and buy something at a parts store, pulley, and put it in, it'll be a lot easier. But like I said, I had all this stuff laying around. It was a little easier tonight for me to do it. I didn't want to go out tonight and wait till tomorrow to fix it. I want to finish it up tonight. Okay, as I'm putting this together for the final time, I do want to show you one thing. It's easier to put this idler assembly on first down there, because it gives you a lot more room. Then when you work your way up, you can just put your little idler pulley on the piece right there. Work your way up, and it's a lot easier, because if you put that idler pulley on first, it's kind of in the way of this. It makes it a little bit easier, and you can actually see the belt, how I've got a bungee cord up there. I've got a bungee cord around it right there, and that idler pulley will slide right in there, and I don't have to fool around that belt and drop it on the floor or anything. I think I explained that well enough. And I think you can see there, I've got it in there. All I got to do now is tighten up the bolts, and I will tell you, those bungee cords that I stuck over there to hold that belt up right there, that thing made it easy. All I did was slide that pulley in there, and that belt slipped right over that pulley. And everything's tight with that bungee cord, so that belt doesn't go flying down to the floor. That really helped out. Just a little tip there. So now I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up, I guess, and we'll go ahead and start it up, and we'll see how it sounds. I mean, there's no point in you watching me putting this back together. You're smart enough to take it apart. You are smart enough to put it back together, I'm sure. So let's go ahead and finish up here, and we'll start it up. Okay, party people, it's all back together, so let's go start it up, see what we got. And to make it more confusing to you guys, I think it was probably that bottom tensioner bearing that was bad on that pulley. Hey, sounds pretty good, no more squeaking. Go over here and look at it. There's the top pulley I put the bearing in. and the bottom pulley down there, right there. Tensioner pulley. So that tensioner pulley bearing was bad. That's what the noise was. So if you have that noise, go for the tensioner pulley first, change the bearing, or just replace that pulley. And if that squeaking continues, then check your bearing there on the idler pulley. Although I found both bearings of mine bad, you just don't know. So there you go. So that's how you change that tensioner anyway. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them, and hopefully you like the video, and be careful if you're working on your vehicle. So other than that, I'm pretty happy. It's no more noise, no more squeaking. Yay! All right, talk to you guys later. Have a good one.